Renee Knight with Inside Unmanned Systems. We're at the AUVSI Xponential show in San Diego. I am here with Vander Mey, CEO of Aergility. Thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know these shows are busy, so
For sure.
Yeah, right? But it's nice to take a sit, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so how long have you been coming to the show?
First year, I think, was 2019. So we've been here, well, this will be the fifth year, I guess, we've been at the show.
Very good. And can you tell us a bit about your company and kind of what you're working on?
Sure. So the company is called Aergility Corporation, and we are developing a large cargo drone. By large, we mean something that can carry 500 pounds for 500 miles, for example. It's a hybrid aircraft that provides for that. That's why we can do the long range. And we've been at it for a good while. We've done multiple iterations of scale models, and now we're at the point where we're testing our full-scale prototype for the aircraft. We expect our FAA certification for experimental next week, less than a week. So we're excited about that. So,
yeah, that's very exciting. So can you talk a bit about the technology and what makes this solution different?
Yeah, so one of the things that we looked at solving this problem a number of ways. We came up with a rather unique, actually patented technology. It's called managed auto rotation technology. And what it is basically a very sophisticated gyroplane in its simplest sense, but it takes off like a multi-rotor and it flies forward, and the rotors are specially designed so as you fly forward they go into what's called auto rotation. That means that the air going through them spins the rotors. You don't have to apply any power to them. So that provides the lift. And then we call it managed auto rotation because we don't just do that. For example, if the CG were forward in the aircraft, that means there'd be more load on the front and less on the back. So all the rotors won't be in exactly the same state. But because we manage it, the autopilot can say, okay, these need some power, but I'll take power out of the back ones. So the effect is that we have net zero power, electrical power needed when we cruise. And that's all provided, of course, we have a turboprop engine that pulls it through the air and that spins the rotors. And because it also has a wing, at cruise speed, about 50 to 70% of the load is actually on the wing, so that the rotors become somewhat less loaded and are much more efficient. So the efficiency of the aircraft is on the order of a fixed-wing aircraft, even though the rotors are still spinning. We do all our flight maneuvering and control by modulating the RPMs of the rotors. So it's a unique technology. It's very simple. We have just fixed-pitch rotors and motors and a turboprop, and that's basically the whole engine. There are no control surfaces that are necessary, so and all of the parts are high reliability and high length. The turboprop, for example, has a 3,000 hour TBO, and the motors are even higher than that. So,
very cool. So as you're kind of telling people about the technology, what are their questions? What kind of do they?
Well, a lot of them don't catch the idea of the managed auto rotation at first. Those who were into the aviation sometimes think, oh yeah, that's what helicopters do when they lose power and they have to go, which is true. But that's why we say, well, this is like a gyroplane, not like a helicopter. Okay. So they tend to understand that. But all of that actually enables an aircraft that's pretty efficient for the purposes which we designed it for, which is cargo hauling. So it's a large aircraft. The prototype has a wingspan of about 25 feet. And it will carry payloads up to 700 pounds, or useful loads of 700 pounds, but we split between the payload and the fuel. So if you want to go further, you have a little less payload. So we say 500 pounds for 525 miles, for example.
So what do you see? What are the end users? What are the use cases?
Right. There's a number of end users. Basically, our differentiation from, let's say, other people who are flying drones or aircraft is that we go from any spot to any spot directly. That is, we don't need landing spaces, we don't need infrastructure, we don't need chargers, because basically the little battery that's used as we take off gets recharged rather quickly in flight. So we can go from any spot to any spot. Now that particular capability is particularly useful in things like military applications, where they want to get things from this point to some place which they, has no preparation of any sort whatsoever. So that's one of the big applications, and we've been funded in part by a military organization, just say that. And then there are humanitarian is also a big one, where you can take things, particularly in things like active war zones, where you need to get aid back across the lines. You can't get a truck through. So these aid organizations that want to get through, they can't, but you can go over them rather quickly, and this will cruise at 120 miles an hour. And if it gets shot down, that's not good, but nobody's going to get killed because it's unmanned. So it's very attractive from that point of view. Then there are a lot of other applications too that have come up, some we hadn't anticipated. For example, in Canada, you have the northern nations, which have to First Nations that have to have their mail service. Well, that's hard to do year-round because there aren't good roads and good communications, and you have mud seasons and ice seasons. So this is a way that can be used to deliver those kinds of capabilities.
Yeah.
And then another big application is in island nations, a huge application there, where Indonesia, the Philippines, PNG, those kinds of places, where the nation has lots of islands and you're trying to get semi-priority stuff around. Well, generally it's not justifiable to use a helicopter because that's way too expensive.
Sure, yeah.
But this has a price point per hour which is much, much less than a helicopter. So.
Very good. So what's next, right? You have the certification you say coming up. What's
right.
the next
Yeah, so
step?
the certification is just for us to be able to do our flight testing. So we have an area, we have our own flight test area that's FAA has approved right next to our airport, so it's very convenient. And if, as you saw when you came by the booth, you can see our aircraft is just hovering, but it's got straps on it because we didn't want to end up in jail. So, but next week we take the straps off, Lord willing, next week we take the straps off and start some serious flight testing. What we've learned from this and from our scale models has been a lot. We use, of course, all the normal tools that you do in development, this CFD and the FEA and all those kinds of things to make sure that the aircraft is supposed to do what it's supposed to do before you build it.
Sure.
But still you learn in that process of where things would be more optimally located. And so the production version is a little bit different. It's actually a little bit smaller in terms of width, even though it's going to carry about 50% more payload. So, and that's in process right now. We expect to actually be able to deliver product in about a year and a half. So it's going to take that long to get to that point.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
So how do you see, I guess, the technology and kind of the industry in general evolving in the future? Where do you see things kind of going?
Yeah, well, obviously, just like a lot of other stuff, all of the technology is evolving in various parts. This particular technology, of course, is an aerodynamic principle, so that's sort of, shall I say, fixed in place. But
Sure.
Things like motors, when we started this process, the motors that we're using now are not available. The motors that we're using in the production were not available when we started the prototype.
Oh, wow.
So those things are moving along and they're becoming more efficient. Same thing with the motor controllers. The ones when we started weren't available that we're using now, and the ones for production are going to be even more advanced. So all of that sort of thing, the whole electric ecosystem is evolving, the batteries and stuff. Now, we don't need a lot of batteries. We have about 125 pounds of batteries on this almost 1-ton aircraft. So it's not a lot because we only need it for takeoff and for landing.
Sure.
But still, we need to follow that technology as well, and that's also improving as time goes on.
So for anyone watching this or visiting you at your booth at the show this week, what's the main takeaway you want them to go
The main takeaway is we've got a really great capability to get things where they need to go at a lot less expensively than it can be done now and at no risk to a human. So think of applications like offshore oil platforms where there's a lot of stuff that has to go back and forth, for example. That's another application because the helicopter is extremely expensive. Now, if it's taking people, it's taking people. But if it's taking equipment, that's a very expensive way to do it. Our capability would be basically autonomous, means you can take off from base, go to where it needs to go, deliver the equipment at a fraction of the cost. So we see those kinds of applications growing.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
great. I
thank
appreciate
you.
you taking
Appreciate
the time to chat with us.
Yeah,
Very
thank you very
interesting
much.
technology. Can't wait to see when it's out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. For more from the show, visit InsideUnmannedSystems.com.